you take an active role in an airman's life, then you're going to make them better and you're going to make yourself better at the same time.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Tinker Talks. Tinker Talks is your audio format podcast that talks about what's happening behind the fence line of Tinker Air Force Base. I am your host, Mark Hybers, and today we have another special treat. We get to sit down again with the installation commander, Colonel Hall Sebren. And you're just about 1 year in the seat now, right, sir?
Just about, yeah.
Awesome.
So thanks, Mark and Paul, for having me in here. This
Thanks
is great.
for taking time to come back. So let's jump right into it. We've got a podcast today that I think is very near and dear to your heart and things you really believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And recently you had set out to write a series of commentaries based on the Air Force Chief of Staff General Brown's action orders. Your first in the series was Readiness Training and Taking Care of Each Other for a Positive Change. That, of course, is highlighting Action Order A for airmen. In that commentary, you had mentioned that a way to impact an airman's life is to spend time with them, mentoring and coaching them to make them better. Why do you feel mentoring your airmen is so important?
Well, everybody has to learn from somebody. And if you can be that good role model for somebody, then what better way to help bring somebody up from, the airman basics of the world, right, up to a colonel or a chief or a general or whatever they want to be in their life. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to spend time with people. And why not coach? Why not mentor? Instead of just kind of being around, if you take an active role in an airman's life, then you're going to make them better and you're going to make yourself better at the same time. So that's kind of my initial thoughts, as we're kind of starting this podcast off on, why mentor? Because we have to raise that next generation. Right.
Are coaching and mentoring the same thing?
I actually thought about this a lot over the weekend.
Right.
And I looked it up, mentoring, I looked up coaching, and they're very similar. And I am sure on another podcast that has some super long form, like the Jocko podcast or Joe Rogan, right, where they're like 2 or 3 hours, you could really spend time differentiating between coaching and mentoring. And at the end of the day, it's about making somebody better. And so one of the things I wrote down as I was looking that up was, a coach isn't always a mentor, but a mentor is always a coach, right? Because it has to do with how much time are you willing to put into someone else? Right. Sometimes coaches can be mentors. The person on the team that's really awesome and they're trying to get them to go to college, or maybe they came from a tough background and they're trying to lift them up. But there's a ton of kids on a team. So football, I played in high school. There's a ton of kids on that team that when you come, you see the coach tells you what to do, you go home. That's not necessarily a mentor. They're helping to improve your performance, but they're not helping you be a better you. Right. The mentor piece comes in when you're coaching someone to perform better, but you're also trying to make them be a better version of who they are. And so that's kind of my mind, the difference between coach and mentor. And I think you should be both, right? There's definitely two roles in there, but if you had to pick one, I'd go with the mentor.
Awesome. And coaching may be more targeted. Sounds like from what you're saying, it's maybe more of a specific
Absolutely.
area.
Yeah. And so, for the last, when did I start coaching? I've coached high school wrestling for a long time. And I've been a CrossFit coach for about 10 or 11 years now. And so you spend that hour with people and you're trying to make them just as good as you can make them, right? I want you to do this lift, with perfection. I want you to perform this wrestling move with perfection. And that's the coaching piece. But then pulling them aside and talking to them about how doing this particular sport is going to help you be a better you, right? Start talking to them about education, things like that. That's kind of how you make that transition or that differentiation, I think, between coach and mentor. Right.
I love that. And then I don't know if you and April had talked about it on the last podcast about your background and love in wrestling, but I think once you had even talked about rolling with some of our security forces kids.
I'd love to. I haven't had the opportunity yet. Right. Dr. Patton, who's my physical therapy doc, she cleared me to do that, so now I'm looking for that opportunity to go.
Awesome. And you'd mentioned Jocko, but I wish I could read like Jocko does. That'd be fun for us to sit down and read a book like that someday. But I would not do the reading justice. He's a pretty phenomenal reader.
He's really good at what he does.
So, sir, what makes a good mentor? Like, is it a personality trait? Is it something you learn educationally?
I think, from the mentor side, you have to be present. You have to have a actual love. Like I talk to everybody all the time about there's two different kinds of L, right? Like if you could see my fingers, I do the big L love or a little L love. So big L love is the love that you have for your own children, your mom and dad, your grandparents, your family, your spouse. Little L love is the love we should have for anybody, right? Just anybody walking down the street, but particularly our men and women that wear the uniform, right? Or that serve. So our civilian airmen, because we're all on the same team. And if you don't have that little L love for someone, you're not going to make a connection with them. And as a mentor, you need to make some sort of connection with the person that you're trying to work with. Mm-hmm. And you have to do that because in some way, shape, or form, you care about that person and how they do in their day-to-day life, right? And what they're going to grow up to be. And so from the mentor side, that's what you need. From the mentee side, right? Because I think we always need both, and we'll probably get into that later. From the mentee side, you're looking at someone who is the same, right? Is this person present with me, or are they just here because they have to be here, right? And if that's the attitude that they feel, whatever you're talking to them about is probably not going to go over very well, or they're just going to miss it, and they're just going to, yep, he's here just because he wants some bullet on an EPR somewhere. Right. And so you have to be present, right? And you have to share that love of humankind back and forth to make this thing work out.
Well, that's a great concept, that little L concept. I mean, I think the big L concept, we all kind of naturally lean into, but the little L concept is, I like that. I like it that you say that kind of stuff, because, taking that on like legitimately really just makes everybody just slightly a little bit better.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to tell them too, right? So I take a lot of flack from my other maintenance officer brethren, right? Because we're supposed to be these old crusty people who grumble all the time. And when I get up in front of some airmen, I tell them I love them. Like some people are like, oh, that's weird. Right. So then I start talking about that distinction, and it seems to resonate pretty well. And so I'll just keep doing it until someone tells me I can't. But
love it.
Yeah.
With a little L.
Little L love. Yep.
Yes, sir. So did you have a mentor when you were coming up through the ranks?
I've had tons, right? So my first were just my parents, right? And I don't know if you can say your parents are your mentors, but my dad was in the Air Force, and so he, along the way, took me to see a lot of things that maybe other kids didn't get to see, and kind of said, I told him that I wanted to go in the Air Force from a pretty young age. Just airplanes are cool. So why not be in and around airplanes as much as possible? And so he started taking me to things around the base. And I don't know if he knew or not what the impact was going to be onto me, but I really enjoyed meeting all the people and talking to them about the jobs that they did, right? I got to meet crew chiefs out on the flight line, and they told me what stuff they did, right? I got to meet a bunch of fighter pilots because that's what he was. And then my mom was awesome, and they're both still alive, so they're both still awesome. But talking to me about how people learn. She's a teacher, and how do people learn? How can you get their attention and ensure what you say sticks in their brain? Right. And so it kind of started there, and then along the way, I had different people just always trying to look out for me. I had some upperclassmen helped me out along the way when I was in basic training and as a freshman, and stayed in touch with me for years and would ask me about problems. Wow. And then when I got to my first base, I had this guy. He later became chief, but he was a senior master sergeant at the time. Senior Master Sergeant Jones. That dude was probably 8 feet tall, 6 feet wide. In my mind, he has a really deep voice. Right. And he, day one, I show up and he says, no, I probably shouldn't cuss on the podcast. He's like, you don't know anything about what's going on in here, but you're in charge, and so it's my job to teach you. Right. And so he did, and he said, okay, this week, so my first job was an armament flight. This week, you're going to work on all the F-16 equipment. Okay, and you're going to sit over there in the coveralls, and you're going to get to know your airmen, and you're going to get to know how the stuff works. Roger that. And the next week, you're F-15s, and the next week, you're A-10s, and the next week, you're H-60s. And all the way through the whole shop. And I was like, dang, I learned a ton by him making me get down and do work,
Right.
and be with airmen, right? And so he was a great mentor to me. And then, I could just go and name all these great bosses. I've had a blessed career that I know other people have not had, especially lieutenant days. Some of my other lieutenant buddies that we started off at Nellis, they did not have the same experience. And so it was a little later that they were able to get that and then bloom. So it really helped me along the way from second lieutenant to colonel.
Excuse me. I'd have to imagine that part of that is you need to be open to the experience, right?
Sure.
You need to not be shut off and not be open to being mentored or coached, right? And this coaching, the Air Force it looks like they're really trying to put some support behind coaching. They've come up with a new coaching. You can sign up for coaching now on af.mil. So, sir, if you were going to coach me, what would that look like? How would that start?
Well, let's make that distinction. Am I going to coach you or am I going to mentor you?
Good call.
Right? So if I'm just going to be a coach, then I'm going to say, hey, Mark, let's see how you do some aspect of your job. And then we'll go through like a debrief. Okay, I saw this was good. I saw this was not good. Here's what I recommend you do for these things. And let me show you how to do that. Watch you do that. Let's do it one more time, make sure it's in there, and then I'm out. If I'm going to mentor you, if that's what you're looking for, then I'm going to come in and I'm going to start off with, hey, Mark, how are you doing today? What's going on in your life? You look a little down today because I've been paying attention to, hey, 2 days ago you were super happy and today you're looking a little sad. What happened? Maybe a family member died. Maybe you didn't get the promotion you wanted. It could be something like that. And so we're going to start off that way because I care about you, right? And then we're going to get into the coaching piece of it, which is, hey, Mark, I noticed you're having a problem with this. I recommend we try these things, and let's see if you can do them. I'm going to show them to you first, and let's see you do them, right? And then we'll do it one more time, make sure you got it. And so that mentor thing is just, it's more time that you're giving to that particular person or group of people to ensure that not only are they good at their job, but they're also better people.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yeah. You sure got to be present.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, absolutely.
Takes a lot of presence. So how long should an airman be mentored, and when should they transition from being the mentee to the mentor, in your opinion?
Well, so this goes back to what I said before. I think you're always going to be both. You're always going to be, you should be, mentor and mentee. Even the youngest airman basic can be a mentor to someone. Right. Maybe it's a elementary kid. Maybe it's their, younger sibling. Maybe it's a high school person who's trying to figure out what they want to do in their life. So airman basics can be mentors. But then they're going to need someone, right? They're going to need a senior airman or a staff sergeant or somebody to take interest in them. And so it's always a little bit of back and forth. So even as a colonel, I have mentors, right? And some of them are other colonels. I've known, and they're a little bit farther along in the journey than I am. Some of them are general officers, and some of them are chiefs now, or retired. And so you always should have both. Right. I'm not sure that fully answered your question, but that's kind of what I'm thinking of right there.
Actually, it's pretty sage advice, because I think that kind of states the point that you should never really consider yourself to the point where you're past the point of one of those things, like being mentored or menteed. I mean, there's until the day we leave the earth and go wherever it is you think you're going, there's more to learn, more to be coached on, more to be mentored for. So I think it's a great way to answer the question, actually.
In the Air Force, we have a weapons school, right? It's stationed out of Nellis, but there's little debts everywhere, and the kind of the phrase that they use, or their motto, their slogan, whichever one you want to use, is humble, credible, approachable. Mm-hmm. And if you think about that, what the weapons school does is they pick the very best person out of a squadron in whatever it is that they're doing, right? So we can start off with, just because I'm an F-16 fan, let's take an F-16 pilot. What they're looking for is the very best F-16 pilot from base X. And they're going to bring them in to the weapons school, and they're going to teach them how to be even better so that they can go back and teach more people.
Right.
But to be a good teacher, coach, mentor, you've got to have the humility, right? You cannot walk into a room like you're the ace of the base, you know everything, and no one can tell you anything, because that makes you not approachable, right? So humble, credible, and approachable. They're going to have the credible things because they're an IP or what, they get X number of hours, so they've already got that. But if you don't have the humility piece to recognize that you can also learn from those you're teaching, and you don't have the approachable piece so that people will actually come to you and ask questions, then you, like, where are you? You're nowhere, because no one wants to talk to you, right? So if you don't have all those three pieces, I think you're gonna be missing out.
It's good to try to learn that stuff too, because I think sometimes it takes either time to figure that out, the humble part, or having somebody actually just kind of educate you on why. Like, that's a great question. Why, some people don't want to be humble because you're really good at something. But so we talk about one of the most important things about all this is being present and in the moment. And of course, with the way the world, I guess, is going, and certainly the Air Force, there's so much time for leaders as they grow. It would seem that they're so much more involved in not getting the chance to be with their airmen, and it's a lot of meetings and scheduling and emails and decision making that's not directly shoulder to shoulder with airmen. But what would you say to a supervisor out there that says they really would love to mentor their airmen, but just don't have the time?
I'd probably have some choice words for them, actually.
Some we can't say.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're wrong if you don't have time, because that's your job. Your job as a leader is to make sure that those who work for you and with you are the best that they can be. And you cannot do that solely from your office. Mm-hmm. You have to get out and you have to see and experience what it is that they are doing. Now, let's on the enlisted side. If you're a tech sergeant, right, and you're a whatever, AFSC X, and all your airmen are AFSC X, you could take the opinion that, for X amount of years, I did that job. Mm. And so I already know everything there is to know about that. Or you could take the approach of, man, some things might have changed since I was an airman. I probably need to get out there and see how they're doing it and make sure, number one, they're doing it correctly. Okay. Number two, they might have figured out a new and different way to do something, right? That's going to save us time and save us money and get that airplane back up in the air, get that piece of equipment going, whatever it is their job is. Mm-hmm. So you are mistaken in your thinking if you don't have time to coach and mentor someone, because that is your job. Right? You don't have to have super long sessions either, right? Mentoring and coaching can take moments. Mm. So if you're thinking you don't have time, then I'm thinking it's time for you to exit the Air Force.
Right. And I think that's a great point that you make about, the coaching can take, or mentoring can take, literally moments. It doesn't have to be some long, drawn out, scheduled process. Yep. And you even had some outward mindset in that as well.
Sure.
I love that. And maybe someday we'll be able to do a podcast maybe about that as well, and your goal for this wing and that concept. But some of the best mentors in my life, and this is very true, and I thought about this when we thought about doing this podcast. There were people that didn't know that they were mentoring me, and like you had said too, silent mentoring. I just watched and followed their actions, and I have found that was something that was very powerful in my life. And because I'd always never really felt like I should go ask somebody to mentor me or to coach me, unless it was in a sporting area or maybe something very specific to my job. But maybe I've just always been a little reserved that way. But what's your thoughts on the possibility of silent mentor? And actually, do you relate that to the core values of the Air Force, where maybe that makes some of us a little bit better silent mentors than others?
So I think I would make a distinction between what you're saying. And this is, there are people who are examples, right? They're role models. And that's that's separate, I think, than being a mentor. If you're doing your job well, you're providing everyone an example to look up to, that is kind of a passive thing. I think mentoring is an active thing. I am reaching out to you. I am taking time to spend specifically with you or with other people to ask questions, right? To be asked questions and provide, my opinion, my advice. And so I think what you're talking about, at least in my mind, is you've had some really great role models to look up to, as I think we all have. If you look around the Air Force, there are great role models everywhere. But that's not a mentor. Right. We could call it silent mentoring. Okay. In my mind, they're a great role model, but they would not necessarily be a mentor. But I'm okay with whatever terms we want to use. And what you're really talking about is, hey, everybody out there, if you're in a leadership position, people are watching you whether you know it or not.
Right. That's a great point.
And so you need to be on your A game all the time, right? Unless you're, in some room taking a nap somewhere, but they're probably, where the heck is, where's Sebren at? Why is he over there taking a nap in his office, right? But they're watching that too. But that gets along to the example that you have to set, right? You got to, so with my front office, I told them, hey, I'm not going to come into the office before this time right here. And I'm going to leave about this time. And about an hour before I leave, my expectation is that you guys are probably out of the office at that point, unless something weird and crazy is going on and I really need some support and some help making some phone calls.
Right.
You got to set that example for, you don't need to get here an hour before me, and you don't need to leave an hour after me, because that makes it a really long day for you for no reason, because you're not really productive, right? So I want them to come in for that set amount of time and then be gone. And for me, as the leader / mentor of that group, I have to be as consistent as possible so that they understand that I don't get frustrated if something's not done the second I walk in, because I've told them I don't want you to be here much earlier than when I get here. I get it. Sometimes they feel like they need to open the office. There's some quiet time, right? I'm not in there bothering them about something, right? End of the day, same thing. I'm trying to kick them out. 4:30, 5 o'clock. Get out. Go be with your family, because I want you to get that rest, that relaxation time, so you can come back again. Do it on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, and on Thursday, and on Friday, and the weekends, as much as possible, that should be your time. So I try not to bother them with texts or emails. And so, that's a little bit of what you're getting at with that silent mentor piece, is just providing that example for them.
Right. And consistently.
Yeah.
So this one may be a challenging one, but if you could pick from anyone in the whole world, who would make up your Mount Rushmore or of mentors or coaches?
Mark, I thought about this all weekend, and that would be a huge mountain that would probably span the entirety of the continental United States. Certainly my parents are going to be up there. I think Sergeant Jones, that I talked about earlier, Chief Jones, he's going to be on there. I think my first AMU OSE boss, Jim Sir, he's going to be on there. He was a maintainer and then went to pilot training and then flew F-22s, but also a great mentor, leader, friend of mine. I've got this group of dudes. When I got to Spangdahlem, we all came together. There's some personnelists in that group. There's some civil engineers in that group, other maintainers, supply officers, which we would now call LROs. And this group of people that we had at Spang, that the 06s at the time dubbed us the Horsemen, because we were the ones that were getting stuff. They literally came up to us at the club at Spang where we were eating lunch and said, you guys know you run this base, right? And we're like, nah, sir, you're 06, you run this base. And they're like, no, really. We're providing you some direction, but you guys are running this base.
Right. And
we're actually taking our cues off of what you're doing. And so that's kind of where we came up with this. They came up with this little name for us. And we've all helped each other out, right? So that's peers, mentoring other peers. When I have a problem, I'm calling up and I'm going, hey, I don't know what to do with this, right? When I was a PA, so I called him up and I said, hey, I'm having an issue. I don't understand this concept. Can you help me out? And so that I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. So now I could be a better boss for you, right? And you. And okay, I have a little bit better understanding of what PA is from that aspect. So it's been man, there'd be so many names you'd have to put up there.
Right. It's
if I started listing them off and I missed one, somebody's going to get mad. So, gosh.
That's okay. I think you hit the good ones. And, of course, you'd mentioned a couple times the parents alone. And I think that for all parents out there, that beginning stage, and, of course, to our Paul, who's off microphone right now running our audio over there in the background, but as a brand new father, it's good insight to listen to also, because it all starts with good parenting. But, sir, if there's nothing more you'd like to add, I think this is a good spot to wrap up. I do look forward to the rest of your commentaries in your series this year. I think that's a good idea, and certainly much needed for all of us. And thanks for your first year here. You've been great to work for, so looking forward to another great year. And actually, as we head right up to the air show next year, which will be right about
that'll be right about
your
the time.
Transition period.
This year has gone by super quick, and I'm super thankful to all the folks out within our 72nd Air Base Wing who've kind of helped me, guide me, all the way to our mission partners, right? The 552, got the Navy, got the AFSC, got ALC, DISA, DLA. There's 45 of them on this base that are all providing help and guidance to me on how we can make this base better. And so that kind of leads me down the road of bureaucracy, which will just as a teaser for the next paper that's going to come out. I think it's real important that we all take a look at that, and maybe we'll talk about that on a separate podcast. But we've got to find ways to stop doing things that don't allow us to make the mission happen better, faster, cheaper. Right. If there's something that we're doing that we don't need to be doing, we probably need to stop doing it. So that's what we'll be talking about maybe next time. That's definitely what the bureaucracy paper is going to talk about, that I know that LT Vilajama's been working on with me, so I appreciate her help on that. And
she's a good troop. Good troop. Well, thank you again, sir. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come hang out with us. And that is going to wrap up another edition of the Tinker Talks podcast. If you've made it this far in the podcast, do us a favor and don't be lazy. Hit that like and subscribe button. Maybe even leave a comment. It does help the algorithms. We don't control the way these formats put our podcast out there, but the more you like it and the more people subscribe to it, the more it'll get out in front of people's faces. And we have been a top 100 podcast before on the government's, there are thousands of government podcasts out there. So we're doing good, but we can always use the little bump. So with that, we're going to leave you. Also remember our social media sites. Look at us on Facebook at Tinker Air Force Base, and that's also on Instagram. And, of course, follow us on Twitter. That is at @team_Tinker. And until next time, you all have a great day, and I will see you next time.